HMS Colossus of the British Royal Navy was the nameship of her class of dreadnought battleships. She was launched on 9 April 1910 and commissioned in 1911. Although very similar to Neptune, she was not part of Neptune's class, as Colossus and her sister ship, Hercules, had great armour. She joined the 2nd Battle Squadron of the Home Fleet. When the First World War began in August 1914, Colossus became the flagship of the 1st Battle Squadron. While commanded by Captain Dudley Pound, she fought with distinction at the Battle of Jutland in 1916 while acting as the flagship of Rear Admiral Ernest Gaunt. During the battle, Colossus took 2 hits which caused minor damage and 6 casualties. When the war came to a close, Colossus became a training ship until 1920, when, under the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty, she was stricken and eventually broken up in 1928. Her sister ship was scrapped in 1921. Origin. In 1908, the Lords of the Admiralty became alarmed at rumors reaching them which suggested that Germany, seen as the most likely opponent in any future naval conflict, was building dreadnoughts in secret in a bid to exceed the number operated by the Royal Navy. Agitation to accelerate the British dreadnought building program was led by Admiral Fisher, the first Sea Lord at the time. There was considerable opposition to the proposal, led by Winston Churchill, who was at the time President of the Board of Trade. This opposition was ultimately overruled, and Colossus and her sister ship HMS Hercules were approved for construction in the 1909 program. She was launched on April 9, 1910 and completed and commissioned in July 1911. Armament. The main armament was 10 12-inch Mark 1150 caliber guns, arranged in 5 twin turrets, more correctly referred to as hooded barbets. The term turret had by this time entered common usage. A turret was positioned on the forecastle on the center line. P and Q turrets were arranged en echelon on the main deck, with P on the port side being forward of Q on the starboard. The wing turrets had a theoretical arc of bearing on the side on which they were positioned of some 170 degrees, that is to say from 5 degrees off the bow to 5 degrees off the stern. They also has a limited arc of fire on their opposite beam if the other midship turret were to be disabled. Y turret was situated on the quarterdeck at main deck level, and X was immediately forward of and super-firing over Y at quarterdeck level. The arcs of fire of A, X, and Y were all some 270 degrees. The weight of the shell fired was 850 pounds, and the maximum rate of fire per gun was 2 rounds per minute. Although allowing for spotting of shell fall 1 round per minute was the anticipated battle rate, the secondary armament consisted of 16 4-inch Mark 7 guns in single mountings. In order to maximize the effect of these guns in the primary role of defense against torpedo attack by small craft, 10 were carried in the forward superstructure, it being assumed that most torpedo attacks would be launched from forward of the beam. The remaining 6 were carried in the after superstructure. In 1917, 3 of these guns were removed, and a 4-inch anti-aircraft gun and a 3-inch anti-aircraft gun were added. 4 3-pounder guns were also carried high in the superstructure. In common with the majority of battleships of the period, Colossus was equipped with torpedo tubes. They were contained within the hull and discharged underwater, being positioned 1 on either beam and 1 aimed directly astern. The weapons carried were 21-inch hardcastle torpedoes with a maximum speed of 45 knots and an effective range of some 7,000 yards. Armor. The armor protection in this ship was great. greater than that of the preceding three classes, all of which had thinner armor than HMS Dreadnought. The main belt, which ran from a position on the forecastle to the quarterdeck at the level of the main armament muzzles, was 11 inches thick. The upper belt was the same overall length, being 8 inches thick amidships over the machinery spaces and magazines, tapering down to 2.5 inches forward and 2 inches aft. Over the length of the citadel, the upper deck was 1.5 inches thick, while the lower deck was 1.75 inches. Aft of X turret, the lower deck thickness was 3 inches, and this deck was increased to 4 inches over the extreme stern as a protection for the rudder and screws. The forward bulkhead, which was positioned immediately before a turret, was 10 inches at the top, tapering to 5 inches below armored deck level. The after bulkhead, immediately astern of Y turret, was 8 inches, tapering to 4. The turret faces were 11 inches thick, tapering to 7 inches on the sides. The turret roofs were 4 inches thick. The armor of the barbets varied from 11 inches to 4 inches, varying according to the degree of protection afforded by surrounding armor. The other barbette, the adjacent side armor and overlying deck armor. The conning tower was protected by 11-inch armor and its communication tube by 5-inch thickness. The total weight of armor in the ship was 5,474 tons, of which the armored belt accounted for 1,610 tons. Machinery power was provided by Parsons high-pressure steam turbines, driving 4 shafts. There were 18 boilers, manufactured by Babcock and Amp Wilcox. The boiler working pressure was 235 to 240 pounds per square inch. Each boiler was heated by 3 single-orifice burners of standard Admiralty type. Each burner could consume 300 pounds of oil per hour. Maximum claimed horsepower was 25,000. Up to 2,900 tons of coal and 900 tons of oil could be carried as fuel. A full load gave a radius of 6,680 nautical miles at 10 knots to 4,050 nautical miles at 18.5 knots. Trial performance figures, which were normally run under best possible conditions and would not have been normally attainable in service, show a maximum speed of 22.6 knots, 8-hour speed at full power of 21.5 knots, and 30-hour speed at 18.00 horsepower of 19.6 knots. Career Colossus began trials on the 28th of February 1911, and these continued until July of the same year. She took on board a full crew on the 31st of July and was commissioned at Devonport on the 8th of August in the 2nd Division of the Home Fleet. This division was renamed the 2nd Battle Squadron on the 1st of May 1912. She took part in the Parliamentary Review of the Fleet in July 1912, and exercised with the Home Fleet in October and November. She visited Cherbourg with part of the fleet in March 1913. In December she was transferred to form part of the 1st Battle Squadron. On the 29th of July 1914 she sailed for Scapa Flow as the possibility of war loomed. During the First World War she remained based at Scapa Flow until 1918, except for a brief period from the 22nd of October to the 3rd of November 1914 when she was stationed at Lough Swilly. In November 1915 she was made flagship of 1BS, relieving HMS St. Vincent. On the 31st of May 1916 she was present at the only major battleship engagement of World War I, the Battle of Jutland. In this engagement the 1st Battle Squadron was split into 2 divisions, with Colossus leading the 5th Division comprising HMS Neptune, HMS Collingwood and HMS St. Vincent, with Rear Admiral Ernest Gaunt in command of the division and Captain Dudley Panser serving as captain of the ship. After the Grand Fleet had deployed, Colossus was 17th in line, and her lookout sighted the head of the German High Seas Fleet at 17.51. She opened fire against the German battle line at 18.30 when the range had closed, but without discernible effect. At 19.00 she fired at a light cruiser, believed to be HMS Wiesbaden, at a range of under 10,000 yards, soon switching fire to the destroyer G-42, which was near missed and damaged. Wiesbaden later sank, having been fired on by several ships. From 19.00 to 19.20 she was, together with HMS Collingwood, in action with the I Scouting Group, which comprised the German battlecruiser force. Several hits were reported on SMS Erflinger. At 19.16 Colossus was damaged by heavy shellfire on the forward superstructure. There was no serious damage and the fighting efficiency of the ship was not affected. 6 men were injured, other than the ships of the 5th Battle Squadron, HMS Warspite, HMS Malaya, HMS Barman, HMS Valiant. Colossus was the only British battleship hit by gunfire at Jutland. From June to September 1917 she was under refit, and moved with the Grand Fleet when the main base was transferred to Rosyth in April 1918. She was present at the surrender of the German fleet on the 21st of November 1918. On the dispersal of the Grand Fleet after the war she became flagship of Vice Admiral Reserve Fleet at Devonport. On the 30th of June 1921 she was put on the disposal list as being surplus to requirement, but was rescued to become a boys' training ship, in a militarily non-effective state. On the 23rd of July 1923 she was reduced to a training hulk. She was sold to Charlestown Shipbreaking Industries in August 1928 and broken up from 5 September that year. Bibliography. Campbell, John. Jutland, An Analysis of the Fighting. London, Conway Maritime Press, 1998. ISBN 0851777503. Gardner, Robert and Randall Gray. Conway's All the World's Fighting Ships 1906 to 1921. London, Conway Maritime Press, 1985. ISBN 0851772455. Jellicoe, John. The Grand Fleet 1914–16. Its Creation, Development and Work. London, Castle and Company, 1919. British Warships 1914–1919 by Dietmar F. J. and College J.